Hello, it's you again. I'm Krupa. This is Chris, and this superhero show is kind of a roundup of all the superhero nonsense that's on the site every week. We're not going to talk about X-Men Days of Future Past, even though it is out in cinemas now, because we asked you what you want to do, and you wanted us to wait a week so you could go out and see it. So we're going to do that next week, go into more spoilerific detail.
Yep.
But luckily, fortunately, there was another big bit of news this week.
Big bit of news.
Do you want to explain?
Yeah. Well, we've been calling it Batman versus Superman, haven't we?
For quite a long time. This is the as yet untitled Man of Steel sequel.
Well, the titled Man of Steel sequel.
But now very much titled.
And yeah, it is Batman v Superman.
Yes, not versus.
Dawn of Justice.
Okay. Now, we should say there's already a conversation on site between Jim and Eric going through evaluating that as a title, but we're going to talk about something else. But gut reaction? I think overwhelmingly,
meh.
Yeah.
I hate the word cheesy, but it's a bit cheesy to me.
But Jim made a very good point, I think, in that conversation that Justice League is quite cheesy.
Yeah.
Is Avengers cheesy? I just don't like. It's hard to get critical distance sometimes. Dawn of Justice is particularly fromage.
Yeah, very much so. What do you think?
Again, without verbalising it, nah. Did it need a subtitle? Didn't. I think we already gave the filmmakers the title that people were comfortable with. Yeah. But it's kind of like when because for so long it didn't have a title, we created one, and then you become attached to using that title. So it's quite hard to get. We're not going to call it. We're not going to use that full title.
And it reminds me of Captain America: The First Avenger, which really didn't need to be called The First Avenger. Yeah. It could have just been called Captain America. It's not like people didn't go and see the Avengers. Because of that.
What was the Avengers called in the UK?
Avengers Assemble.
Avengers Assemble. Whoever used that in the UK?
In England, it's Avengers Assemble. In America, it's Marvel's The Avengers.
Right.
And I think that might have had something to do with the Avengers movie based on the TV series.
Yeah. But overwhelmingly, everyone just called it The Avengers.
Yes. Exactly. And everyone will call this Batman v Superman, won't they?
Versus Superman. Right, okay. So this got us thinking about superhero titles. They are inherently silly.
Yeah.
Because you've got to create names for things. You've got to create kind of names that suit otherworldly creatures, have insane abilities. You've got a woman called Storm running around, but you kind of don't think about it. You kind of go with it. Yeah. You buy in, you suspend your disbelief. But what are some of the good and bad superhero film titles? Now, Chris, being a kind of half-empty kind of guy, is focused on the negative. Yeah. Is this right?
Yep. I've been thinking about the ones I hate.
Okay.
Batman Forever sprung to mind.
I thought about...
Because it doesn't mean anything. What does Batman Forever mean?
What does it mean?
They got to a point where, we have to put a word after Batman.
To be fair, there are a lot of words in the English language they could choose from. I think there's in excess of 10 million.
Yeah.
And Forever seemed... because it's not even related to the story at all, because you've got Two-Face and the Riddler in that movie.
Yeah.
And the introduction of Robin.
Yeah.
At least Batman and Robin kind of make sense.
Yeah, or call it Batman 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I don't mind a number. I've got no problem with a number. But for superhero movies seem to feel the need to not put numbers, to have words.
We are encountering the rise of the colon.
Yeah.
Which sounds like a medical condition. I've got a rising colon. But everything needs a colon, because I almost wonder whether numbers are stigmatized. I don't know whether horror movies, particularly slasher movies, have perhaps stigmatized numbers that you think, it's really derivative. I don't need to see Friday the 13th, 7th, because it would be 6. You kind of almost want to... Yeah. Winter Soldier, it's going to contain a new antagonist.
That was a good one. Another one that features a colon, an old one, Quest for Peace. Superman 4. Makes you not really want to see the film, I think.
It's questing for peace.
Which would be a good thing if you've ever seen Superman 4, because it's bloody awful. But yeah, it's not a quest for peace. That's not very exciting.
Yeah.
I want to think of people fighting, not being peaceful.
Yeah, there's lots of rises and dawns.
Yeah, I wrote another one down. I can't think of off the top of my head. One, though, that I remember from my childhood, which always confused me. X-Men Origins Wolverine. Well, those words don't really fit together.
Do you think that's a title created by committee?
Well, no, I think it was.
It's probably we need X-Men in there.
It was part of a larger plan. There were going to be a series of X-Men Origins movies. We were going to get Magneto, which kind of I think morphed into First Class. Basically,
there was always going to say more POW camp stuff.
So I think the fact that didn't was such a flop not a financial flop, but it was so poorly received. Yeah. I think they gave up on the X-Men Origins and just restarted all over again.
The Wolverine as a title.
Wolverine was good.
Definite article. You know exactly what. It's not a Wolverine. It's not. It's not another Wolverine. It's the Wolverine. Good clarity.
Yep. And I'll tell you my worst one. Although the Americans might not know about this one. Howard the Duck was not called Howard the Duck in England. Do you know about this? And I don't think it was in Europe. I remember it going to hire it out. Howard the Duck's a great name. It tells you what you need to know. In the UK, it was called Howard, a New Breed of Hero. But then, no mention of the duck.
You're in for a surprise when you bought your ticket. What?
Especially when he has sex with a woman. So that was I never understood the thinking behind that one.
Right, you know what's a good title?
What's a good one?
I think Man of Steel isn't a good title.
No.
Because, they're kind of going, but what is a good title, and this is what they're probably trying to draw on, is the second Nolan Batman movie, The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight.
Because after a pretty... Begins isn't a very dramatic word for the film.
Yeah.
Batman Begins.
Yeah, I'm surprised they never did.
It's a nice
The Dark
alliteration.
Knight wasn't used before in the previous films, but I think they were scared of using it because they thought they had to have Batman.
Yeah, so Batman Begins isn't particularly a sexy or interesting title, but it's a good film. The Dark Knight, I think, is brilliant because, one, it is good fan service. That is how Batman is referred to.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight, it's strong verbal construction. It evokes a aspect of his character, but it's also, why I think it's a good title, is it ties into the actual plot of the movie.
Yeah.
And it has thematic resonance. That you've got The Dark Knight, which is obviously Batman, but you've also got The White Knight, and they talk about this in the dialogue. They say that Harvey Dent is the kind of legitimate counter to Batman. So Batman's reforming streets at night until he can get Gotham to a position where he can hand it off to a legitimate political body or individual, in the case of Harvey Dent, who will reform Gotham, civic reform, social reform, political reform.
Yeah.
And that's the whole kind of structure of the movie.
Classic Nolan.
And the thing is, Nolan is a kind of literature graduate. I think his brother maybe philosophy, but his brother was a writer who wrote Memento Mori, which was the basis of Memento. And throughout all of Nolan's films, I think there's a real literary quality, and there's a big emphasis put on words. Like the first line of The Prestige is, are you watching closely? Because if you are, you can work out what's happening in that film. There's loads of clues. So there's all about language in Nolan's films. And I think The Dark Knight has that kind of significance. So at the end, the closing speech is Commissioner Gordon rhapsodizing on the death of Harvey Dent, but actually what he's saying refers to The Dark Knight. And he says to his son, we can't ever, say... There's a counterpoint between the eulogy he's given at the funeral of Harvey Dent and what he says to his son, which really balances the two types of Knight really well, and that's why it's a brilliant title.
So you like that one? I'm getting that you like that one.
But that's the whole thing. That's why a title shouldn't be left to marketeers. It shouldn't be left to people who come along later and need to slap a badge on a movie. It should be the writer and director, the people who've crafted it and know how to give it a title that is tied in with the movie.
Yeah. I mean, I just
rant over.
I'm posting a video this weekend with Simon Kinberg, interviewed the screenwriter of X-Men: Days of Future Past, and we have a long chat about X-Men Apocalypse, the next one. I like that because the character's called Apocalypse, but it's also going to be a disaster movie. Yeah, he talks about it being the first Roland Emmerich superhero movie. So that one works. Any other ones you like?
No, it's mainly just The Dark Knight.
Yeah, really.
It's just that one.
Did you come up with the idea for this show this week so you could talk about?
No, I really did. But when I thought about it, it's like I can go on a big rant about that. Yeah. So I think let's do that every week. So next week we're going to make good on our promise, talk about Days of Future Past. So if you see it this week, write into us about anything and everything. So as IGN_UK feedback at IGN.com.
And something else I'd like you guys to write in about. If you look on the site, I had a long chat with Hugh Jackman a while ago, which I think we teased a few shows back. And it's finally gone up on the site. And it's him talking about the fact that he would love to see Wolverine join the Avengers. I basically said to him, what would be your dream superhero movie if different studios didn't have the rights to different characters? And he said it would be that. He wants to see Wolverine fight the Hulk. He also wants to see another Deadpool Wolverine movie because he doesn't think they did the character justice last time around. I think we can agree upon that. Yep. So those were Hugh Jackman's dreams. But who would yours be if different studios didn't own different rights and you could see anything happen up on screen? What would you want to happen? Yeah. So please email us in. We'll do I think we're probably going to do a bumper edition or 2 episodes, 2-parter. Yeah. Where we go into a lot of detail on Days of Future Past because we both loved it. Yeah. I think it's one of the great blockbusters of this summer. So enjoy the movie, and we'll see you next week. And I just noticed you're not drinking anything. I know. Is that because of the controversy of it? Did you see the comments under last week's show? No. Debate as to what was in your mug. People wanted to know. Nothing. That's why I've got a clear glass this week, just water.
I don't know, probably tea. I don't know. Anyway,
we'll bring the mug back next week as well.
On that note, see you next week.
Cheerio.